You're listening to Systemic Era Podcast. The failure was designed.
Dead in the water. Ex-MAGA influencer eviscerates final hopes for dying right-wing group, based on an article by Benito L. Cruelty. Turning Point was never a movement, it was a brand. The grief machine, Ashley St. Clair's comments are less interesting as gossip than as a fracture in the right self-mythology. She says Turning Point USA is dead in the water after Charlie Kirk's assassination, and she is describing something bigger than one organization's post-founder wobble. She is describing a political operation that depended on personality, spectacle, and grievance more than durable institutions. That is the point. The source of power was never a broad youth uprising. It was a controlled pipeline of outrage, financed and amplified through proximity to the Trump-aligned machine. Who actually held power? Kirk did not build a democratic movement. He built a hierarchy. Turning Point existed to channel young conservatives toward a set of loyalties: Trump, anti-abortion cruelty, anti-feminist discipline, and performative combat with enemies selected from the top down. The real institutional power sat elsewhere. Stephen Miller, a top Trump White House aide, did not need Turning Point to command influence. He could step into Kirk's memorial and turn it into an ideological display. That is what power looks like on the right now. Not persuasion, but the conversion of grief into political fuel by people who already control the apparatus. The memorial was a message. St. Clair says Miller's speech was horrific and akin to what you would hear from Nazis. That is her language, and it tells you something important about the event itself. The memorial was not being used to mourn, it was being used to consolidate. When a political memorial becomes a stage for authoritarian signaling, the dead person becomes a prop. The living audience gets the real message: keep obeying, keep hating, keep circulating the same agenda under a more emotional banner. That is not confusion, that is design. Women as cover, women as control. St. Clair also touches the right's gender regime without quite naming it. She recalls fighting with Kirk over birth control and says he shifted further on women before his death. That detail matters because it shows the movement's default posture. Women are useful as symbols, but not trusted as agents. Her comments about Erica Kirk needing time with the children are human enough, but they also expose the burden the movement imposes. The widow is expected to carry a public mantle because the brand needs a face. The family is drafted into the machinery. Private grief is converted into public legitimacy. This is the same structure that produced the original anti-woman politics in the first place. Men make the doctrine, women are asked to absorb the damage, and everyone is told it is devotion. Misdirection as a core practice. The article's weakest thread is its flirtation with assassination speculation. St. Clair says there are more questions to ask about the investigation. That may be emotionally understandable, but it also functions like a familiar right-wing move. When your political project is disintegrating, suggest hidden forces and keep the base suspended in suspicion. That is how this ecosystem survives. It rarely admits collapse. It reframes collapse as mystery, persecution, or unfinished business. The point is not clarity. The point is continued mobilization. The pattern beneath the story. This is what the reporting actually reveals. The American right has built too many of its institutions as personality cults attached to grievance merchants and state-aligned enforcers. When the face cracks, the machine does not become democratic. It becomes more naked. Turning Point's problem is not that it lost one man. Its problem is that it never developed a politics bigger than him. What replaces that void is usually not reform. It is stronger gatekeeping, harsher discipline, and more polished propaganda from people like Miller who know how to turn death into doctrine. You've been listening to Systemic Error. Thanks to Raw Story for today's article, with the automated voice of Marcus. Thanks for listening.